Hi, everyone. I hope you have been well. Let's get started with episode 8. There was a lot going on, and for those of you who are coming from my blog, um, we have a new mentor for Kang Chi, but what happens at the end, the last literally few seconds of episode 8, is just spine chilling, and it really throws everything for a loop. We suspected from the previews of, what to expect. We were kind of braced for it, but we didn't know quite what the circumstances were. Well, now we know. So let's go ahead and get started. Episode 8. Sorry, it's really hot in Southern California right now, and so I've got the fan going on. Hopefully you can still hear me. We resume episode 8 with Kang Chi and being, of course, awaiting his sentence, and Chogonen comes up and he tells him, so what's it to be? Will you meet your punishment, or will you actually come over to my side and become one of my men? If you do, then I can make all of this disappear. And of course, Kang Chi literally insults him and says, over my dead body will I ever do that? I refuse to ever become your type of, someone who works for you. Well, then Chogonen says, to his minions, what are you waiting for? Let's go ahead and kill him then. Or I can't remember whether it was to kill him or to cut his tongue or something, but you guys know. It was some sort of vile punishment. And Kang Chi at that point, he's got his little second bead bracelet, the thing that's supposed to keep his Kumio self suppressed, and he fingers that because he's thinking, what do I do? Because Sojong had told me that if I take this off a second time, I may not be able to return as Choi Kang Chi, but if I leave it on, then I'm certain to meet my death. Well, as he's about to break it, you hear from behind him, from the entryway, this deep resounding voice that says, stop, 멈춰라, stop. And then what happens is in walks in our awesome new mentor hero, Shin, and he says that I've come because I heard that one of my men has been erroneously, or there was a misunderstanding, and one of my men has now been arrested under, a misunderstanding. So anyway, the magistrate kind of blusters and he's like, who are you? And then Shin tells him what his position is and everything, and they're duly impressed, of course. And then Shin, and I love this about Shin, he is so quick-witted, and he really has Chogonen kind of running around in circles trying to get the upper hand. So Shin says, who are you? And then, the magistrate explains that Chogonung is this retired official who used to at one point hold this, high place in government. And then Shin says, well, it's interesting that a retired official is literally overlooking the proceedings, the criminal proceeding, as though he is still in power. And of course, the magistrate sputters because, it's been found out that he's the puppet, and Chogonung then says, I'm not here in that type of capacity. I'm here as just an eyewitness to the crime. And so then Shin says, well, what is his crime? Tell me. And then Chogonung says, or I can't remember if it was Chogonung or the magistrate. Now remember, people, and please, please understand that I do watch these really early in the morning, right around 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. And then this time around, by the time I actually sit down to film, it's actually 9 p.m. or 8 p.m. And so 12 hours have passed, and so the details are a little bit fuzzy for me. So anyway, bear with me, okay? So anyway, what happens is the magistrate then explains, well, he's been accused of murdering Merchant Park, who incidentally has been accused of treason. And so Shin says, oh, really? So that's interesting, because shouldn't then Kang Chi be hailed as a hero then for bringing a wrong man to justice? And of course, everyone's kind of stunned. They're like, oh, wait, that's true. And so you see the magistrate and Chogonung literally mentally, their brain, wires and nuts trying to whirl around, trying to figure out how do we, extricate ourselves from this. Well, then the magistrate says something to the effect of, well, but, he's here and we're holding him in custody because, Merchant Park was such a well-revered man among his people. And of course, it doesn't make sense. Lee Sun-shin's like, so you're holding a man who has actually done justice, and you're threatening to punish him or possibly even kill him because he actually brought to justice someone that you have accused of treason. And he's like, which is it? Is Merchant Park guilty of treason, or is Choi Kang Chi guilty of murder? Because he says that if Choi Kang Chi is guilty of murder, then that means that Merchant Park isn't guilty of treason, and you guys get it, right? But if they say that Choi Kang Chi isn't guilty, then what they do is they let him loose and, all of this stuff. So it's so cool because what happens is, in the middle of the, I guess, interrogation, if you will, Cho says something that really makes Kang Chi really mad, and he's about to get up and fight, and Lee Sun-shin puts a hand on his shoulder, and literally Kang Chi looks at him, and he flashes back to when in Merchant Park, when Kang Chi had, as a little kid, had been with all those neighborhood boys, and they had fought because those neighborhood boys had insulted him and called him a foundling and all of this stuff, right? That Merchant Park had defended him, and the thing that he remembers is that Merchant Park had placed his hands on his shoulders at that time as well. So very much the show is clearly saying Lee Sun-shin is now going to become, Kang Chi's mentor in much the same role that Merchant Park was. So literally Kang Chi looks at the hand, and then Lee Sun-shin, of course, defends him and is able to, I guess, free him. Well, what Kang Chi doesn't realize is that Lee Sun-shin has made a contract with Cho, which we find out later on in the episode. Well, anyway, so the magistrate and Cho go into their little, private chambers, and they're discussing what to do. And of course, Cho is upset because Lee Sun-shin has just talked circles around him, and he doesn't know how he's going to be able to keep Kang Chi to punish him, but at the same time, insist that Merchant Park is a criminal, because if he's not, then all of the servants are freed then, and the 100-year inn is no longer his for acquisition, and then Taeseo and Cheongjo are freed, and they would then resume their rightful position in society, and so on, right? Well, while all of this is going on, Yeol sees how great Lee Sun-shin is, and she does this little cute yes. It's so cute. So there's a lot of cute Yeol moments in this episode. Well, what happens ultimately, though, is Lee Sun-shin walks into Kang Chi's prison cell, if you will, because Kang Chi was being held there while they negotiated the terms of his release. And Lee Sun-shin tells Kang Chi, "You're free to go." And here are 3 yang, the 3 coins. And he says, for one day, spend it how you will, using this on 3 people. And at the end of that time, come see me, right? And Kang Chi's like, what if I, what is it to you? And, there's basically Kang Chi being very rebellious and directionless and all of this stuff. And Lee Sun-shin tells him, man to man, this is a promise that you make with me. Come see me at the end, right? And he says, at the conclusion of that, whatever you decide, that will be your fate. You can decide whatever you want. And so Kang Chi gets ready to leave, and it's really just, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very sobering to realize that the villagers are still against him. They're not convinced at all that he is innocent, of course, because Cho and the magistrate have already told the villagers that Kang Chi has killed Merchant Park. And so they literally give him wide berth as Kang Chi gets ready to leave the magistrate's residence. And then Kang Chi and Cho literally look, and they're kind of about to spar, and then into that line comes Lee Sun-shin. So it's very symbolic of the fact that Lee Sun-shin is acting as a buffer to keep Kang Chi in check. Well, as Kang Chi leaves, we then flash back to this contract or the negotiations that Cho and Lee Sun-shin had made. And it was basically a little idea that the magistrate had concocted, saying, why don't you get Lee Sun-shin to write a contract saying that they will release Kang Chi under Shin's name and credibility, so that if anything bad happens, if Kang Chi does anything bad, then Shin would be held liable, and as a result, too, as a consequence of that, Shin would then give up his position. And so Cho Gon-woong, of course, is like, yes. So he's pleased. And when he proposes that to Shin, there's this kind of tense moment, and then Shin says, okay, and he takes out, he kind of rolls his sleeve, and then with the nice, brush, he writes the contract. And then what's really cool, and for those of you who don't like a lot of blood, be very squeamish about this, but there's a little dagger that's at the table, or a little knife, and he literally unsheaths that, and then he goes like this to his thumb to draw blood, and then he, with the bloodied, thumbprint, he then stamps his, I guess, seal. So, yeah, and the look on Shin's face, just stoic, emotionless, saying, I mean business, and it's a calculated risk he's taking. He right now, Kang Chi is really unpredictable, and he's risking his life, his position, and his hopes to defend Korea against outside forces on the decisions and actions of this one unpredictable half human, half Gumyo. But Shin really shows his faith in him and his conviction by very wordlessly just, stamping. It's pretty cool. So I think when you guys do eventually watch it, you'll be like, oh, so this is what Grace was talking about. Yeah, it's an awesome scene. Well, anyway, so what happens is after they leave, Cho Gon-woong, of course, is like fuming because his whole life creed, which you see kind of reiterated in the episode, is that when he sees something he likes, he takes it, or that he wants, he takes it. If he can't take it, if it's not for him to possess, he will steal it. And if he cannot steal it, then what he'll do is he'll utterly destroy it so no one else can have it, right? So that's his life creed, and he's kind of like very bitter and seething, and and his head henchman, his top guy, says, don't worry, sir, we've got things covered. We have a plan B. And he's like, are you sure that you planned things well? And then he's like, yeah, I did. And then we flash back to the time when Tessel had been tortured. And remember how the head henchman guy, he uses black magic, right? Well, what he does is he takes some sort of a hallucinogen, or some sort of let's say it's some sort of a vapor drug, right? And he has Tessel inhale it, and then he tells him, while Tessel is like half unconscious, bloodied, he says, Choi Kang Chi killed your father. At first sight, kill him, right? And what's really frightening is that Tessel is, of course, bloodied, and he's watching, he's kind of just in a trance, and in his mind, he relives that night, but instead of Cho Gon-woong's man killing his father, he sees his father fall, and then right behind the father is Choi Kang Chi with his sword like that, And so it's this very chilling scene that now Tessel is convinced, because he's been brainwashed, that his best friend had killed his father. Well, as Kang Chi stomps out of the inn, or the magistrate's office, you see Yeol trailing him, right? It's so cute because he turns the corner, and then Yeol realizes, oh, I better catch up. And then so she like picks up her speed and she runs after him, and he's right there. And so she, skids to a halt, and he's like, are you spying on me? And she's like, no, I'm escorting you, or I'm here to protect you, or things like that, right? But basically, Kang Chi and she have some words, and she said some really awesome things. They always have some incredibly poignant and very really meaningful conversations, and I forget, because I forget to write it down. Sorry guys. But anyway, needless to say, she does tell him about Shin and how he's gone to bat for her, kind of thing, and how he should be thankful and all of this stuff, right? And then as they're talking, and there were some, it's a really cute scene, okay, and very meaningful scene. But anyway, as they're talking, the villagers come by and they start throwing things at Kang Chi, saying, we can't believe that the magistrate has let such a guilty person like you, free onto the streets. And so Yeol jumps up in front of him, and she's trying to, protect him from all the rubbish. And she's saying it's not true. There's been a misunderstanding and things like that, right? Well, Kang Chi takes off and she's like, hey, don't do anything, bad. And he's like, I don't care. You know, right now I'm not a human. I don't really care anymore and stuff like that. So he takes off and Yol kind of still spies on him and follows him. Well, the place that he's headed for is, of course, the courtesan's house or the brothel. And so what's interesting at that point is one of the, the prostitute who is one of Cho Gonung's favorite, right? The one who had taken Chongjo to see Cho Gonung in the previous episode. Well, as one of the senior prostitutes, I guess, or I suppose I should say courtesans, right? She and her other, courtesans, the senior courtesans, are all lined up on a veranda. And then they have all the newbie, courtesans in training on the other side. And basically, it's an ancient Korean form of hazing. She tells the girls that nature may teach them how to be pretty and all of this stuff, but what no one teaches them is how to drink wine. And because that's one of the things that they're going to have to do is pour wine for the men, but also drink wine with the men. And so she has them pour it, and then she tells them, you are to sip it in one long sip, and you can't act disorderly, you can't look drunk or act drunk or say anything in your, kind of dazed state from the alcohol or anything like that, right? Well, all the little girls drink except for Chongjo. And then so, of course, the senior courtesan gets upset. And then she tells her, other courtesans, it looks like the little newbie needs a little bit more prompting. Maybe she's shy. Because you have to remember, back in ancient Korea, women did not drink alcohol. And so when Chongjo is given this alcohol to drink, she looks at it appalled. Well, then they take Chongjo's little drink bowl and then they pass it around all the, I guess, veteran courtesans. They each spit into the bowl. And then the head, the mean, courtesan, I'll call her Cho Gonung's courtesan, she takes the bowl and she's like, okay, we've diluted it for you. Have a sip. And then Chongjo gets really upset and she takes the bowl and she throws it at the senior courtesan, and of course, then a ruckus breaks out. Well, of course, the headmistress finds out about it, and then she asks, who's at fault, right? And all the other courtesans are like, oh, it was her, she started it, and things like that. And so, to the head, to the headmistress's credit, she asks Chongjo, she gives Chongjo a chance to kind of defend herself, and Chongjo remains tight-lipped. She doesn't say anything. And so then the headmistress says to her head servant, give me the hwechari, which is the little branch stick that they used to use to discipline their children, as well as, I guess, servants or trainees or whatnot. So she has Chongjo lift up her skirt, and then she proceeds to whip her with that little stick or branch, right? Well, into the scene then Kang Chi walks in and he takes her, Chongjo, and he tells them, I'm taking her out of here. And everyone's like, who are you and all of this stuff. And, we know Chongjo cannot leave the premise because she is a slave. She's been, that's her punishment, is to live the life of a courtesan. Well, they make it all the way to the grounds. And of course, by then, all of the servants, the male servants, surround them with broomsticks or swords or what have you. And Kang Chi is ready to fight. And, he tells Chongjo, don't worry, trust me. I'm not going to leave you here by yourself anymore and things like that. Well, as he's getting ready to fight, the headmistress, of course, comes out. And from her vantage point up on the house, she tells him, if you leave, you will be basically be living a life of fugitives, because you're going to always have to live the rest of your life hiding, because what you're doing is a crime. And she's like, if you want to, then fine. But, just realize that that's the type of life you're going to be leading, and you're never going to be able to clear Merchant Park's name or any of those things. And, basically the voice of reason. And in some respects, the thing that I really like about the headmistress is the fact that she really is trying to teach Chongjo how to survive now that she no longer has the protection of her father's name. Well, even though Chongjo doesn't want to hear it, she realizes the reality of the situation. And what is so heartbreaking is that, and it happens in slow motion on film, she yanks her hand from Kang Chi's hand. Because Kang Chi, the head mistress has said, let go of her hand, and Kang Chi had tightened his hold on her hand. Well, Chongjo then snatches her hand away, and you see Kang Chi just kind of stunned and looking at her. And she says, leave. She's like, I can't go with you, right? And you know that Chongjo is crying, and she tells Kang Chi, she's like, if you want to take me out of here, then clear my father's name. Then we can actually leave here, you know, on our own rights and merits and blah, blah, blah. Sorry, I can't think right now. It's really late. I've had a long day. But anyway, so Kang Chi's really stunned, feeling betrayed, of course. And in some respects, the look on his face, I mean, he knows that she hasn't rejected him in the sense, but there is this incredible sense of rejection on his face and dejection as well. So he goes out, he walks out of the, brothel, and he looks back inside because it's probably one of the last times he's going to see Chongjo for a while. And then he looks down at the little coins in his hand and then he curls them in, right? Well, Yeol watches him because, that's what she needs to do. She understands what Shin, what type of negotiation Shin has made. And of course, it's probably because her father, Tan Pyeongjun, has told her, right? And so, Kang Chi, she trails Kang Chi, but she kind of loses him a little bit. And so she frantically then tries to look for him. And she lost sight of him because she was thinking back to what her father had told her, because Tan Pyeongjun had called her and had told her, this is the deal that Shin has made with Cho Gon-un. So you need to make sure that Kang Chi doesn't do anything to get Shin in trouble. Because if Kang Chi looks like he's going to create any type of mischief, that's enough grounds for Cho Gon-un to then literally depose of Shin's place and everything, right? And so the father basically says, if Kang Chi looks like he's even the slightest bit going to cause trouble, I want you to shoot him. And so she kind of hesitates, like, do you want me to send someone else in? She's like, no, I'll do it. I'll do it, father. And then Kwon comes in and he says, if she can't, I'll do it. And she just kind of looks at him like, you cruel, heartless man, right? Well, anyway, when she loses sight of him, she frantically starts searching for him, right? Well, Kwon has one of his, underlings watching Yeol to make sure that things are okay. Well, that underling, soldier comes and reports, oh, I think Mistress Yeol has lost sight of Kang Chi because she's looking for him. And so at that point, then Kwon takes his, bow and arrows and he starts to look for Kang Chi as well. Well, he finds Kang Chi as he's walking down the road going towards the inn, the 100-Year Inn, and he's got him in his, line of view. And just as he's trailing Kang Chi, Yeol locates him as well. But then she also realizes Kwon is aiming his arrow at Kang Chi. And so you see this very kind of tense moment where Kang Chi, oblivious to everything, just kind of angrily stalks his way into the inn while Kwon is, getting ready to shoot the arrow. And then you see Yeol thinking, do I shoot Kang Chi or do I shoot, Kwon, right? And at the last moment, she turns and shoots at Kwon. And the thing is, we knew that she was a great marksman, but her arrow ends up knocking out the head of his little arrow. And he's stunned and he looks over and he sees that it's Mistress Yeol who has stopped him, right? Well, then he goes down and he's like, are you crazy? Do you know that guy is headed into the inn? Do you know what kind of mischief he can cause? And then what will happen to Shin, right? And she's like, you know what? I trust him. And he's like, well, I don't. And she's like, you know what? Can you please trust me then? Trust the faith that I have in him, in Kang Chi, and trust the faith that I have in Shin, who would let him, loose and stuff like that, right? So Kwon decides to kind of wait. Well, Kang Chi goes in. He takes one of the brooms from one of the servants, and then he kind of twirls it around and he smashes it into the I guess reading table of Chogonung, right? And what's really cool is that the head henchman is like trying to stop it, but he can't really. And Kang Chi prefaces that whole twirling of the broom and the crashing of the table by saying, you asked me for an answer to your question of whether I'll be your man. I'm here to give you the answer. And then he's like, yeah, I will never ever, And he says, I'm here to tell you a few things. One, I will definitely vindicate Merchant Park, and that I will definitely bring back Hesel and Chongjo so that they can reclaim their rightful position, right? And he's like, third thing, I'm going to take your life as well. And so he says that, and then he leaves, right? Well, for those of you who watch this later, just bear in mind, when I saw this moment, it like made me a little nervous. And the reason why is this: when Kang Chi takes a stick and he slams it into that reading table, causing the reading table to actually crumble, he's still harnessing kind of the residual Kumio superpowers, right? And he does it with so much force that the ground underneath, remember the secret passageway kind of goes down to a basement, and there's all that, money. Literally, he causes the entire room to fill with dust because there's so much shaking going on. And when he did that, I just thought, oh my gosh, please do not inadvertently reveal the secret, passageway that will then, prevent Lee Sun-shin from getting his armored boats. And you guys get my point, right? So anyway, that's what happens. He's able to leave without any mishap. And what's so heartwarming is that as he leaves Chogonung's little private chambers, his father and the rest of the servants come to greet him. And there's this really poignant moment where the father and the son are kind of, having a heart-to-heart and things like that, right? Well, Kang Chi then promises that he's going to do anything and everything in his power to, reestablish everything back to normal. And then word reaches Lee Sun-shin. So Cho Go-nung has sent someone to tell Lee Sun-shin, come here because the person that you bailed out from my jail, or bailed out, and that you said you would take responsibility for, has created mischief, right? And what's interesting was right when Lee Sun-shin gets that notice, he and Tam Pyeong-jun were talking about Choi Kang Chi, because Tam Pyeong-jun was saying, how could you, aren't you nervous or things like that? And Lee Sun-shin says, yeah, I did do perhaps a little reckless thing, but he says, I trust him, and for the most part, I know he can be predictable, but I think if he's on our side, it'll be a good thing. Well, Tam Pyeong-jun very rightly asks, what if he ends up killing people, and what if we can't control him, or, what if the beast in him gets the better of him? And then Lee Sun-shin, and I love this, he's very clear about his purpose and not letting anything distract him, because he just basically tells Tam Pyeong-jun, if it comes to that, I will be the one to kill him. And you're just kind of like, wow, will of iron. Well, anyway, so Lee Sun-shin goes, and Cho Go-nung says, here, look, this is the mischief, or this is the ruckus that your man, Choi Kang Chi, has caused. And he sees, the broken table and all of that stuff. And then Cho Go-nung says, he's threatened me and all of this. And then Lee Sun-shin says, well, where's the proof? Who are the witnesses who saw this person? And then Cho Go-nung says, well, my men and I did. And he's like, let me talk to the servants. And then, of course, then the servants get called. And then Cho Go-nung says, tell this man that Choi Kang Chi showed up and, caused a ruckus. And what's so awesome, and I was like, go, Dad, go. Choi Kang Chi's adopted father steps forward. He's like, sir, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't seen Choi Kang Chi, my son, at all. And then Choi Kang Chi's guy friend and remember the maidservant of Chongjo, they both pipe up, I haven't seen him either. It's so cool. So Lee Sun-shin looks over at Cho Go-nung and he's like, I guess Choi Kang Chi wasn't here. And then he leaves without any, concern. And then Cho Go-nung looks at Choi Kang Chi's father and he's like, what? And basically he orders the head henchman to basically punish the father as well as the two other servants, the friends who had piped up saying, I haven't seen him either. And he says, don't give him food or water for a few days either, right? Well, later that night, Kang Chi shows up to Lee Sun-shin, their designated location. He puts the three yang on the table, and then he tells Lee Sun-shin that he has made his decision and that he wants to learn and become Lee Sun-shin's man, right? And that he has three goals. First is that he wants to, of course, vindicate Merchant Park, clear his name. Second is that he wants to help reclaim the 100-year inn, as well as help reestablish um, Taeseo and Cheongjo back to their rightful place in society. And he says the third is that I want to be human. And, he tells Lee Sun-shin, sir, that I'm half human, half beast, but, I'm neither here nor there. And he's like, I want to be human, and that's the third reason why I am joining your ranks, right? Well, as he says that, we flash back to one of the conversations he has with Sojong before he leaves, where Sojong tells him, you know, they start talking, and I love their interaction because Sojong to me reminds me of like Yoda, and Kang Chi sometimes reminds me of the hot-headed Luke Skywalker from Star Wars. But basically, Kang Chi's like, I can do it, tell me how to like become human. And Sojong just looks at him, he's like, are you kidding? Your father was like 1,000 years old. Your father said it took him a couple of hundred years before he could tame the beast within him and live more like a human being. And what are you proposing to do? And he's like, besides, your father tried to become human, even in his infinite like patience and such, and he wasn't able to make it through the 100 days, right? And then Kang Chi's like, well, I can't. Well, he says, well, look, there are three things that you should try to do then. Okay? He tells him, number one, try to be patient, try to be self-controlled, and all of this stuff, right? Then he looks at Kang Chi, he's like, that's probably going to be hard for you to do too, huh? And then he's like, number two, he's like, stay away from women. Don't give your heart or form attachments with women. And then he looks at Kang Chi and he's like, yeah, but there's already someone flitting around. You're the woman of your destiny that you're not supposed to, like be with. She's, you guys are going to cause trouble, but he's like, that's going to be hard too. And then he tells him the third thing, which, darn it, I've forgotten. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, I hate it. I forgot. Anyway, there's a third thing that he says, which causes Kang Chi to like get on his knees, and he's like, tell me. But it's, oh dang, I can't remember now. And I told myself, remember those three things. Anyway, sorry guys. Please don't thumbs down because I can't remember the third point. But anyway, so what happens is Kang Chi then goes and Lee Sun-shin then calls Tam Pyeong-jun and he tells him, this is your guy. I'd like for you to train him at your military training camp. And it's so cute, because Choi Kang Chi gets down on his knees and he's like, sir, I entrust myself into your care, sir, and all this stuff. And it's really cute because earlier on in the episode, Kang Chi remembers that Lee Sun-shin and Merchant Park had told Lee Sun-shin, I would like for you to train Choi Kang Chi, And of course, at that point, Choi Kang Chi has said, no, Merchant Park, sir, there's only you that I want to serve and all of that stuff. Well, anyway, as Kang Chi is, I guess, pledging his allegiance to learning from Tam Pyeong-jun, it's so cute because from the side, Yeod is there and she's like, yes, and she's like so happy and things like that, right? Well, she turns and she's like all happy and she's literally a little bit of a skip and a hop away from the scene and she runs into Kwon, right? And Kwon basically tells her, I can't believe that, Lee Sun-shin would risk his life and, his purpose and his career on such an unpredictable guy like Kang Chi. And, he says some other stuff. And Yeol just stops in her tracks and she tells Kwon, you have a tendency to underestimate, Lee Sun-shin. And she said, back then when I stopped the arrow, so that you wouldn't stop Kang Chi from entering the inn. She said, it wasn't because I trusted Kang Chi. She said, I trusted Lee Sun-shin's judgment. This man, he would not risk his future, his career, his life goal, which is to protect Korea. And I love the fact that he's such a patriot. But anyway, Yeol says, I trusted in him and his decision because he would not carelessly put his life and his life's purpose on the line for an unpredictable guy like that unless he felt like he was trustworthy, right? So I was like, yay, yo, great reasoning. Anyway, so the next morning, they're about to leave, and Kang Chi, pays his last respect to Shin, and he says, sir, if I had returned just out of curiosity, what would have happened if I hadn't decided to do the right thing and to be trained by you and all of this stuff, right? And that I had actually killed people. And Shin very solemnly says, I would have killed you with my own sword. And he says, for a man who does not value life, I have no need. Right? And then Kang Chi kind of looks at him, and then he kind of laughs, and he's like, oh, sir, you do know how to joke. But man, it sounded like you were really serious. And then Shin kind of just smiles it off too. But seriously, he was serious. And I don't think Kang Chi, maybe he registered it, but he just wanted to think that it was a joke. Anyway, so what's really great is that the four of them pay their last respects. Pyongjun, Kwon, Yeol, and Kang Chi, they pay their last respects and bow to Shin, and then they leave. Well, back at the courtesan's, house, Chongjo is given this little salve by one of the servants, saying that the man who had come to, try to take her away yesterday had come by early, really early that dawn to give her a little package. And then she opens this little silk yellow pouch, and inside is this salve. And when I saw that, I was thinking, isn't that the one Yeol gave him when he got hurt, right? And I was like, oh, I can't believe he gave Chongjo a salve that, Yeol had given him. But anyway, the servant relays the message that he said to apply this on her bruises from the Hwechari punishment because it's supposed to work really well. And then you have this very poignant scene where she, holds the little salve container, and she has this look of determination, like I will survive as well. Well, as Han Pyeongjun and his little band of 4 people go back to their military compound, Sojong watches them, and literally as he sees Yeol and Kang Chi kind of playing a little bit and goofing off, right? He says a prayer over them saying, Kang Chi, take care. And Mistress Yeol, please, Miss Yeol, please be careful. And I wish you, safe journey and safe well-being as well. Because Sojong's afraid that one of them is going to die, right? Well, these, it's so cute because Kwon, of course, is exasperated, and he's like, oh my gosh, Kang Chi's now going to be with us every day. And then Kang Chi kind of tussles Yeol's hair, and he calls her a little child, and Yeol's like, wait, who's a child? And then they start playing on the playing on the road back to the military base. Well, while they're doing that at the courtesan's house, Chongjo comes to seek out that veteran courtesan, and she brings that little table. She kind of plops it there, and she says, it's basically her way of saying, I'm going to learn and I'm going to master this life. And she pours herself some wine, and then she drinks it, right? And then she tells the veteran courtesan, she's like, don't call me wench, or don't call me, girl or whatnot. My name is, Pak Chongju, and that's my name. I will call you 선배님, or, like the version of, senior and things like that, right? Well, as the two are, I guess, mending fences, the headmistress of the, brothel sees that, and of course, she's very pleased. Well, the episode ends with Tan Pyeongjun and Yeol and Kwon and Kang Chi returning back to the military training base. And Kang Chi, this is his new home now, right? And the sense of kind of a new beginning for him, as well as a sense of belonging, you can really sense it as you watch the scene. And Kang Chi just looks, and he's kind of stunned and overwhelmed because he didn't realize that the base would be so huge and so well structured and things like that, right? And he's just really impressed. And then Tam Pyongjin introduces Kang Chi, and it's really funny because Kang Chi totally butchers the greeting. He's very casual and all of this stuff, and the soldiers don't really respond to him until Yeol literally like tells them to, and she kind of shoves Kang Chi's head down and things like that, right? And then Kang Chi gets up and he's like, "Oh, you have some weight around here." And then Yo's like, "Maybe just a little bit," and she's very pleased that he recognizes that about her. Well, as they're talking though, Tessel, who had been recovering at the military base, remember how he was then escorted into to recovering at the military base. He staggers out. He's got this long sword with him, and Kang Chi sees him, and he's like, "Tessel!" And as he goes to rush forward and greet his friend, Tessel, in his like still drug-induced kind of brainwashing, all he keeps hearing is, "At first sight, kill the man who killed your father." And literally, he takes the sword and plunges it into Kang Chi's stomach, and Kang Chi's just like, "Oh!" And he's got blood coming out of his mouth, and even during that whole moment, he puts his hand on Tessel's shoulder, right? And then Tessel like plunges it even deeper, and he says, "Die, you who killed my father, die." And that's how literally the episode ends. And so my musing is basically, I'm wondering, I'm already at 42 minutes almost. Anyway, I'll make it quicker. I'm wondering if Kang Chi is going to rip out, I mean, he's going to have to rip off that bracelet to heal. And then I'm really a bit concerned and wondering what episode 9 is going to bring then, because the last time we saw the Kumyo Beast, Kang Chi hadn't been able to conquer it, right? And so I don't know if the 3 goals now of, vindicating Merchant Park, helping Chongjo and Tessel back to the rifle place and becoming human, if that's going to be clear enough for him to master his Kumio self without the aid of that bracelet. So here's hoping for episode 9. I will say I don't know what's going to happen in episode 9 because there was no preview for episode 9. So if any of you guys have, see a glimpse of it, let me know in the comments description below or whatnot, or maybe over at the blog, and I will see you in a few days for the musing of the week. So take care, everyone, and if you get a chance, drop by for the musing week, I think 4 it's going to be, because I do have a question/announcement that I want to make there as well. All right, everyone, take care. Thank you for hanging in with me and joining me for this little recap of Goo Family Book episode 8. Take care, everyone. Bye.